Yeah.
All right, so let's look at, we were writing our code to parse our Pokemon things, right? And I think we currently are reading in from the API and we sort of started writing some stuff, but you kind of had to take our original JSON approach and do something with it. So let's take a look at that. Let me hide these controls. All right, so let's look at our code here. Okay, got it. So right now we're still parsing items in this guy. So that's reading from a file. I'm going to comment out most of this. This is our shop controller. So actually, I don't think that's that big of a deal since I want to do this inside of our. Oh, do we have our shop controller in here? Or is it just, it's a compile problem regardless? Okay, well, whatever. Make you happy again? All right. We had changed, if you remember at the end of class last time, we had added a couple things to our item object because I changed my JSON for it, showing the example. So I just had to, I didn't even fix it. I just told it to shut up. It's like commenting out the lines there. But let's focus on the Pokemon part. All right, so here is our example of our Pokemon stuff coming in. I know last time we were looking at that on a see. All right, so I think, was this the one we're working with? The okay. So we have a bunch of names. This tells us how many of them there's going to be. And then we have a whole bunch of names. So let's go ahead and start working with this guy. So we're going to want to parse this this JSON. Now we're going to actually have to do this in several pieces. That is using our synchronization way of doing it, unless you write your own parser or use a different third-party parser. So our JSON object that's coming in here has, at the top level, it has a count, it has a next, that's a string, it has a previous, that's a string, and then it has a results, which is a collection. Where a collection looks like one of these guys. It's a collection of Pokemon, something like that. Okay, so let's go and write a couple of things here. What did we do so far? All right, so here is our Pokemon. We're going to have a collection of these guys. So we have a name and a URL, and that matches up with this name and URL, and they're both strings. They're both strings. So that guy looks good. Display looks good. All right, now we have this thing called a collection of Pokemon, which is going to have a count, a next, a previous, and then a collection of results. All right. So if we go back and we look at our shop controller, where we originally did our parsing from JSON, we created our root object here, which was a JSON utility from JSON root object, and it took in our JSON string, this guy right here. And our JSON string was the thing that came in from reading. Where did I put that for our? That must be in here. Pokemon API. I probably attached that to a empty game object or something. Yeah, it's on our collection. There's our Pokemon API for no good reason. If you want to separate it from the this thing, we can just create an empty game object here. And let's just call this guy Pokemon Test Geo. And we'll dump the collection object from here. And we'll add it to this guy. All right, so I just moved it to a different game object, so it sort of kind of was easier to find rather than just hiding it inside of our collection thing. All right, so we have our Pokemon API script here. That's this dude. We start our coroutine. Here's our thing we're getting from that, which should be this line right here. I want to confirm that we looks to be the same, but I'll just paste it again. Yep. All right, so that's what we're hitting. We're going to get the request. This is all the same stuff we looked at last time. We're going to wait for the thing to return. Again, we're doing this inside of a start coroutine. That way it happens exactly one time and we don't accidentally put it inside of an update where we get huge bills, or in this case, the Pokemon API would probably just start screaming at us. We ultimately get our response. Now, right now, we're printing it out. So that's our JSON string, effectively, right? All right, so instead of printing our JSON string there, we want to go ahead and put it into something else. So I'm going to go back to this guy. We'll just use here, we can really just steal a couple lines here. That we'll modify as needed. All right, so we're going to get our JSON string. Our JSON string comes from this dude right here. Just wanted to make sure I was still screen sharing. So that is the JSON string. All right, now we want to parse our JSON object. In this case, it's not going to be a root object. In this case, it's this thing called a collection of Pokemon. So we'll create a collection of Pokemon. We'll call this the collection of Pokemon. And this guy will JSON utility from JSON. We have our collection of Pokemon from that JSON string. Now, what does a collection of Pokemon look like? Collection of Pokemon looks like this. We have a count, we have a next, a previous, and a collection of results. So we can go ahead and I'm just going to give this guy a quick ability. So we'll call this guy public void display in here. Let's just we'll steal this display and then modify. All right, and we're going to go ahead and say the count is this dot count. And then results. We'll go ahead and say this dot results, but that guy is going to be a pointer. It's going to be an array of Pokemon. We'll explore that more here in a minute. Let's just make sure we're getting our top level stuff. So we should get from this a count of 1302, assuming it hasn't changed. Is it changed? Nope, looks the same. Count of 1302, and then it will have this array type looking thing that we can then spin through here in a minute. All right, so let's go and go back in here. After we get our collection of Pokemon, we'll say the collection Pokemon.display. And let's see what that guy looks like. This is our Pokemon API. that is currently hanging off our Pokemon test game object right here. So he should just run when this guy runs. Okay, so there's our count, 1302. And here's our result. It says it's a Pokemon collection. All right. So now we can go ahead and update this guy to go through our collection. So we can say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than. We can say this dot count, or we can say this dot results dot count. Those two should be the same. Is it size? Length? Just to show you that those guys are the same here. Presumably the count that it tells us we should have should match up to so here's our count is 1302, and then the result is also 1302. That's the length of our array. Everything seemed to be good there. So now we're going to go through and we're going to tell each of those Pokemon to display themselves. Right now, to display a Pokemon is going to give its name and its URL. So we can write a for loop here for int I, and you can use a for each here if you wanted to, is equal to 0. I is less than this dot results dot length I plus plus, and we'll say this dot results at bucket I, which is going to be one of our instances of Pokemon dot display. And this should now give us our list of 1,302 Pokemon in some sort of pretty print text dealy flippy stuff. All right, so here's name Mimi. Oh, you knew that that rolled off the tongue. Mimikyu busted. And then here's the URL for it. Yada, yada, yada. Now, if we were to follow this URL, let me just, well, here, it'll be easier to do it from this point. Sorry, I want to be on the web page. So I'm going to go to one of those URLs. All right, and we get this thing associated with that guy. Is that right? Oh, that's our abilities thing. Let me get rid of that. This is that's the guy. Oh, no, I was on the right thing, I think. Maybe not. Oh, it wasn't. Well, I guess it is. All right, so this guy has some abilities that, so abilities is the top level thing, and then we have a collection of abilities, blah, 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 a whole bunch of other things. Oh, here's his name, URL, and then a whole bunch of other stuff that I guess he can do. Or man, it gives a whole bunch of information about this dude. But in any case, you can keep going down the rabbit hole if you want, because now we have access to the that URL. So if we wanted to, since we already have this idea of a coroutine getting a string URI, whatever, we could take this same code and take from our collection here. Right now we're showing the display, we get the URL from it, we can get a whole bunch of URLs, then we can make a second call and go get more information, yada, yada, yada. So we see how we can set up our Pokemon objects to mimic what the JSON looks like. So it's a little bit convoluted to set up the objects for it, but hopefully you see it's actually not that difficult. Um, and this is actually probably preferable if you've worked on this with something like Python before. Python typically has you're not going to be dealing with it as automated as this. You are really dealing with it more as individual strings into dictionaries. So in order to get it into an actual object like this, you would have had to take some extra manual steps. So this is, at the end of the day, probably a little bit better. And this is roughly the same way that JSON processing works inside of Java, where it's dealing with serializing and marshalling. All right, so questions about that. So now you can work with different APIs and pull in data, doing whatever you want. You know, if we just quickly do a search here, let's call it there's free APIs. Collective list of free APIs. What does this guy give us? Oh, cryptocurrency. Let's see what that guy looks like. Oh, so here's a bunch of things for getting information about the uh, price of cryptocurrency. Notice here that it tells us how many of them require authentication. So several of these guys need API keys. So you'd have to go in to get an account. That doesn't necessarily mean it'll cost anything. Here, let's see, what does this guy give us? He doesn't exist. Coin cap, is he a thing? Okay, here we go. Coin cap. Oh, it actually brought it up on Postman here. It says you can get an API key from this as well. This is the example request. So it's api.coincap.io/v2/assets. And it gives you something that looks like this, where you have data, you have Bitcoin. Here's the how many of them there are. Wait for me to look at that better. Well, whatever. So we can actually see this. Let's just take that API call there. And we'll go into our Pokemon script here. I'm just going to give myself a quick string to hold this guy. All right, I'm going to steal this because I don't want to turn them into collections of Pokemon. We'll just create another guy here. We'll call this get crypto request. Steal the call here. And then we'll just do a, what was it, a debug.log or JSON string. Get rid of those couple of things. And if we want, we can just stop doing the Pokemon thing with it. So we use the exact same request, just put in a different endpoint for our calls. Go back in here. And here is our data with Bitcoin and rank and symbol and yada, yada, yada. What all do we get there? Okay, so we have data, which is going to be a collection of stuff. We have a symbol, Bitcoin, or BTC. When we have a name, it's Bitcoin. We have a whole bunch of stuff. Here's our price in US dollars is 64,565. So somewhere in here, there's going to be your next crypto. So you get a pretty good wall of things here. So again, if we want to go ahead and get this information, just as a exercise of how easy it is to do this, we're going to call this a crypto collection. And I'm actually going to keep it inside of my Pokemon object for no good reason. So even though we've named this top level thing Pokemon for class Pokemon, notice we're hiding other object types in here. Maybe not the best programming practice, but if the things are closely related, if you can keep them all in one file, then you won't have 4,000 files floating around. All right, so we'll go ahead and steal this guy. And we'll steal this guy. Put a little comment here that says crypto. All right, we'll call this guy collection of crypto. And we'll have this guy be crypto. Now our collection of crypto has data in it. Really wish I could view this in a much oh, did it even give us all of it? It truncated the message. Oh, that might just be for this. That's fine. I can get just want to view enough of this. So let's go run in Postman for the web, because it gives us a better layout of here's my link. Yeah, that dies immediately. But I want the string. Now we got our response. So we have our data, and then we have timestamp. So two pieces of information that come from that guy. So for our crypto collection, we will have a Selection of crypto. It's called data. And then the other thing was timestamp, which is a number. Rid of those two guys. We'll leave this for now. This is data. All right. And then for our individual crypto, they look like this. So I'm actually going to steal that real quick. Back over here to our crypto. I'll paste this in here. So we're going to have a string ID public. Steal that little thing here. They are putting all their answers in strings there, it looks like. You see the value type. They're strings as opposed to when we looked at the timestamp. The timestamp was a number. So this gets into JSON supporting types. So it supported a JSON array, which has a bunch of strings in it, and it supported a number, int. It's possible that it also supports doubles if that number is not big enough. So we'll see if it screams at us. But JSON does have built into it the ability to do types, which then means that we can pull those types directly out using this JSON tool. Another thing that XML does not support when we're comparing this to XML. XML, everything's a string. Now, most of our modern languages, if you have something in a string, you can get it back into the format that you want. But this is a convenience, let's say. Keep trucking here. Right. We can start putting our semicolons after these guys. No, we got to clean it up. Probably do a search and replace thing and do this even a little bit faster. Just take those things. Let's get it into text edit. Create a new document, paste it in there, do a find. We'll replace double quotes with nothing. Replace all. We'll replace colons with nothing. Replace all. Looks like we're still stuck with copy and paste closing. Okay, so that's largely cleaned up. So let's copy that. Just kind of giving you tricks for things you can do. So now we can go back in here, finish putting our semicolons in. If you really wanted to, you could just comment out the rest of the line, I suppose. So you can see an example of what the data might look like, rather than us having to backspace a bunch of stuff. All right, so those are the pieces of information that are coming in for a crypto. We want to have our constructor for this guy. Constructor has to take in all of these pieces of information. Now, in fact, we can even see if it doesn't in here. Some IDEs have the ability for you to generate your constructor. And I'm guessing that this one does have that as well. But it wasn't obvious in the drop down, so we'll just put the stuff in. Have better luck by just copying and pasting. Get our symbol. So the idea is this is begin to end using a brand new API that really has a lot of data in it. And then start thinking about the stuff that you can do now that you have the power to work with third-party data sets easily. Right? A cryptocurrency pricing app. Go into the app store on your smartphone. You see you have all these different apps out there for looking at the price of cryptocurrency. They're pulling their data from stuff like this. Market cap. And you could even write a computer program that takes your output, like looking at something that looks like this, this big thing, pasting it into a document, reading it in, and outputting a default class that has all the right public fields and things like that. So you can automate this process instead of doing this manually like we're doing now. Write that one time, and it can piece that stuff out. Guess what your homework assignment is going to be. It's actually not hard, but it's an important skill that you can have. All right, so volume. And that goes back, so, and this is going to be related to us talking about the exam on Friday. So remember, the exam will be up no later than Monday morning. And one of the types of questions that I like asking are a lot of string manipulation questions. So this will actually be practice for working with strings. Price US dollars. So maybe something like this you would do by hand one time if you were just doing it. Did I already copy that one? I did. But if you are often working with APIs and you wanted to quickly generate this stuff, just a couple of buttons and you have this stuff ready to go. All right, so there's all of our files or all of our variable names. So then it's this dot ID is equal to ID. This dot rank is equal to rank. This dot symbol is equal to symbol. This dot name is equal to name. This dot supply is equal to supply. This dot max supply is equal to max supply. This dot market cap US dollar is equal to market cap US dollar. This dot, what's my next guy? Volume. equal to volume. This dot price, US dollar is equal to price, US dollar. So this is another example where you see an ID really helps you quite a bit, not misspelling things and filling in the blanks a lot. So even though this is pretty tedious, it's really not that bad. Change percentage. VWAP, whatever that is. This dot VWAP. This dot Explorer is equal to Explorer. All right. So there's that guy. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to say name is this dot name. Price is this dot price US dollars. So when we display a crypto, we're just going to say, here's its name and here's its price, even though we're collecting a zillion other pieces of information. So right here, we have our display and our collection of crypto. Go through all of the things in there and display each one, just pulling out that little piece of information. So this is going to be our collection of crypto. Save that file. Go back over here, get crypto request. And what we're going to do is we're going to basically do the same thing we did down here. I'm actually going to leave that JSON string in there for a moment. Crypto, collection of crypto, this guy. Name my variable better. Okay. So now when I run this, I hopefully will get a big list of a bunch of name value pairs for the, well, I have more data than that, but I'll get the current price of a whole bunch of cryptocurrencies updated as often as whatever this API, how often it updates its data. All right. So let's see. We got Bitcoin 64,000, Ethereum 3,175, Tether, that's the US dollar cryptocurrency, 0.9998. XRP, that's my favorite cryptocurrency, by the way. If you saw my talk on blockchain stuff, that connects incompatible banking systems. So it's not an investment grade thing. It just is a let your money live as Ripple. XRP stands for Ripple. Convert US dollars to Ripple, send it to a wallet in China, convert it from Ripple back to the Chinese yuan. You just did a bank transfer in less than 3 seconds for a penny. But the money lives in a fiat currency. You just connected two disconnected, two incompatible banking systems. All right. So in any case there, you see how relatively easy it is to take an API we just randomly found on the internet and immediately bring it into our program and start doing something with it. Now I did keep this string. If I copy that, is it going to be easier to copy it from here? Is this copyable? It is, but I bet you it'll copy better if I do that. Give me all of it. Oh, it actually did give me all of it. It just took a little bit to paste. All right, let me attempt to make this bigger. All right, so if you were given something that looks like this, and I wanted you to generate something that looks like this. Generate that from JSON that looks like this. So if you looked at example output for JSON that looks like this, how could you write a program that will output effectively? Actually, I would probably say you don't need this piece. You're really just trying to do the tedious bits here. So create your crypto class as the output of your program. So you already know how to read in a text file. So if you had some or all of this data in a text file, so for example, you know that that stuff right there represents the stuff that should be in your crypto class, right? You actually don't need any more of the JSON than that. So if you are looking at something that is only so if you only were looking at that text, if you read that in from a file, what could you do to this in order to get the raw information out to generate this class right here? Public class call it crypto. You can name it, you could have your output be just class name or something, but ultimately create all of these public fields with the correct types and then the appropriate constructor, where the appropriate constructor is predictable, right? If as long as you have the variable name, it's this dot variable name equals variable name because you're generating this constructor. So this is string manipulations. This goes back to what I've been testing you on midterms and finals really since CSC 200, where I say this is an important skill set. So if we go back to just this guy, if you had a text file that only had this data in it, what could you do? You would read it in one line at a time, right? You would split it on a colon. So you would get an array with two parts. You don't even care about bucket one of that guy. That's not part of what's going into your generic class, right? What's going into your generic class is a field named ID. So you probably want to peel the double quotes off of it, because realistically, when you read this in, it'll look like something like that because the double quotes are now part of the text. Let me put this back. Well, actually, what we can do for this assignment, just to keep it relatively simple, say for homework, generate the following crypto class as text output from a program that reads in a text file containing this stuff. Guess I have to indent. So given this, generate this. Get rid of all this stuff. Make sense? So this tool, you don't have to compile it or anything like that. All I want is for you to have a program that reads in a file that has that stuff in it and then spits out to the screen something that looks like that. And once you have that tool, what can you do? You can give it any little collection of name value pairs and say, go ahead and give me my baseline JSON class for that. And then you can go and write your own display method or any other functions you wanted to do. But imagine if you had this, what did we spend 15 minutes doing kind of the tedious distributing? Well, now you have one tool that you can use every single time you want to switch to a new API. Just give yourself the classes and move on with life. Consider how powerful that is when you can go out there and in 5 minutes find zillions of APIs for your heart's desire. You have a favorite video game, there's probably an API that gives you some information about it. We already know this guy's big into Pokemon, so he's probably going to hang out with that for a while. All right, so that's homework for Friday. It shouldn't be that horrible. This is just string manipulation stuff, but it's also practice for the final exam. Like I said, on the exams, I tend to ask programming questions that have you manipulate strings, manipulate arrays. I'm testing your programming experience, not how great you are at Unity. All right, so when we advertise Unity to begin with, we kind of advertise it as me kind of hiding your medicine in the dog food. So we're playing with Unity because it makes us feel like video game developers or whatever, but we're learning things like inheritance and stuff like that inside of that. So that's what the exam will focus on, less about Unity specific things. But we'll go through the slides on Friday and make sure that you have an opportunity to ask any questions about what the exam will be on. I'll tell you what the highlight reel might be. And then we'll go from there. Sound good? All right. I will see everybody on Friday. All right, questions, comments, concerns, bribes. What's up?
2 days ago, I kind of asked this question about the internships. So I'm planning to